Quick disclaimer before we begin, this video will contain spoilers for episodes of Dino Fury not yet released in the US. This disclaimer will be pointless in a few months, but I figured I'd say it anyway. Power Rangers Dino Fury is the 2021 to 2022 season of Power Rangers, and the second series under the Hasbro era after Beast Morphers. I was initially really positive about Beast Morphers in its first half, but once season 2 came along, it dropped in quality for me, leading to an overall disappointing season with some really good elements to it. Hasbro seemed to recognize that Beast Morphers fell under some Neo-Saban traps, so we have a new head producer starting with this season, Simon Bennett, who's taking over for Chip Lynn. This guy's been doing a great job of public relations for the brand, with interviews, taking Twitter questions, and debunking dumb rumors relating to the franchise, which is exactly what Power Rangers needs. Dino Fury is also a transitional season of where to watch the show, as we're moving from Nickelodeon to Netflix, with select episodes of Season 1 and the entirety of Season 2 premiering on Netflix first. And as someone who's been wanting Power Rangers to move to a streaming service since Dino Charge, I am super happy about it. Admittedly, it is weird that this happens right after 20 plus seasons of Power Rangers are removed from the service, but now the new seasons that could get all the support they need are easily accessible instead of being on cable at 7 in the morning. Though international airings have still happened before the US airings, which is why this review is out so early. So in terms of accessibility and promotion, this series is a huge step up for the brand, but we are getting yet another dinosaur season, adapting Kyushu Sentai Ryusoulger, which wasn't even done by the time this season got announced. But I don't mind this since Ryusoulger's aesthetics are amazing. They combine knights and dinosaurs into one of the coolest suits and mecha lines in Sentai history. With this sleek look, the familiar theme of dinosaurs, and the accessibility of Netflix, Dino Fury is everything it needs to be a successful season of Power Rangers. But the question is it a good season of Power Rangers? Well, opinions are subjective, but for me, it's been a pretty good season. There's a few stumbling blocks here and there, and we'll get to them, but this is a great start. So let's get into why I like Dino Fury Season 1. When I look at any Power Rangers season, the most important aspect to me are the characters, which Dino Fury mostly does well. Zeto's my favorite Red Ranger in a long while. He's a capable mentor to the other Rangers while still being a bit headstrong. I was dreading his fish out of water comedy bits, but they were actually really good and some of the best parts of his character. Ollie is a dork, and I mean that lovingly. He's kind of full of himself with him being tech savvy and a smarty pants, which can get annoying if not handled well, but I found him oddly endearing. Maybe it's the way he's written or the actor, but there's just a smug yet likable aura around this man that he's in my top 3 characters of the season. Emilia is okay. She had a good introduction and a very cool focus episode where she wears the blazing armor, but she doesn't really stand out for me as much as the other characters. Hell, I think her surrogate father figure Pop Pop is a more fleshed out and funny character than her. Izzy is one of the best Rangers this season. She has some of the best action moments and her quips aren't too bad. I know some people hate her use of internet slang of the 2020s, but if Dino Thunder can be drenched in 2000s teenage culture, why can't newer seasons be drenched in the 2020s? Besides, this is like 3 lines of dialogue that amount to internet slang in the entire series. Also, she has a girlfriend, and they're pretty cute together from what admittedly little we've seen. Izzy's brother Javi is a character that needed at least one more focus episode, but his little jokey moments throughout the show are gold, like when he gets hit with a personality beam and he cries out how cool they look when posing. I hope Season 2 gives his character more things to chew on, especially with his frankly abusive father figure. Speaking of characters that need more to chew on in Season 2, Aeon! He starts off as a show-off who's bitter towards Zeto because he's failed at leadership years ago, but then that gets resolved in his debut episode. Simon Bennett said they want to have Aeon and Zeto feuding for longer, but a Hasbro mandate told him that it wasn't very Ranger-like, so he had to condense a story arc that could have lasted into the rest of the season into 1 episode. If you may spare me a quick tangent, literally the entire reason Tommy Oliver got popular in the first place is because he wasn't very Ranger-like. What the hell? Also, nearly every post-Sword on Era Power Ranger season has characters feuding for a couple episodes. I mean, even Samurai did that! I freaking hate Samurai, it's the worst season of the show! Tangent aside, Aeon has potential to be a great character, but outside of his show-offy tendencies, he hasn't really taken advantage of that potential, especially since he's the subject of the weakest episode of this season, being episode 20, Walking Nightmares. On paper, this should be a banger episode. Zeto and Aeon face their nightmares of their past together, but thanks to the lack of dramatic direction, it feels very anticlimactic and like every other episode. And it's weird because the finale and other scenes in the show have this emotional weight to them, but that was lacking in this episode when it should have been at its peak. As for the villains, Void Knight is my favorite character in this show and possibly one of my favorite villains in Power Rangers. Most of the villains he commands are very wacky with these big personalities like Mucus, Boom Tower, and the super sexy awesome Sliver, which he plays the straight man to, giving him a nice comedic edge. But he also has an emotional core to him because he's doing everything to heal his comatose lover, which leads to some of the best dramatic scenes in the show. I really hope you get some good development and elaboration on in Season 2. Speaking of topics that I hope are still good in Season 2, let's talk about the callbacks and cameos this season. So it seems like starting with Beast Morpher Season 2, Hasbro is determined to give the fans more connections with past seasons, which has continued into Dino Fury. Make from Ninja Steel returns for one of the weaker episodes in the series, but on the other hand, the episode where Lord Zed returns is one of the best. Unlike with Beast Morpher Season 2, where most of the cameos were just there to be a cool aesthetic, Zed acts like the goofy yet menacing villain we knew from the past. They even reference the frickin' Dark Rangers he made, which is unironically amazing. Yeah, they aren't the best suits in the world, but showed me that the creative staff were willing to embrace the sillier aspects of Power Rangers instead of feeding into certain fans' demands of making it grimdark. However, they may be feeding into certain fan demands into making the show more lore-based. With Zed escaping at the end of his episode and Aeon being awake specifically to defeat him, I'm worried about Zed unnecessarily stealing the show next season, especially since Beast Morphers already had a past villain come back as the final boss. And that's not saying callbacks and cameos are bad. Like I said, I love the Zed episode. I just feel like Hasbro's using it as a crutch because they don't have faith in the new guys. And that's really disappointing because one of my favorite aspects of Power Rangers is seeing a new team take up and earn the mantle every year. And I want to see new ideas and characters. I don't want to keep going back and expanding on whatever the hell the MMPR writers made up when they were stoned. Though that's stuff to be worried about for Season 2. As for Season 1, I like it a lot. It's mostly funny with a dynamic cast of characters, great original action scenes, and already has my favorite cast of original villains in the franchise. I might be super on edge with Season 2, but I can at least say Season 1 is a solid Power Rangers season that I would highly recommend. Also yes, Jane and Jayborg exist, they're okay.